May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord. The good news of the gospel is that God has reached out to humanity and offered all forgiveness through Jesus Christ, his only Son, and through his death. Forgiveness is given to us, and he wants us to take that forgiveness and work with it, and thereby also forgive others. That's what our lesson last week was about, and it's again this week. Peter comes to Jesus, and he says, Lord, how many times should I forgive a member of the church who sins against me? As many as 7? For Peter, this was a high amount. I'm sure he in the past thought maybe only once, perhaps 3 times. But as in baseball, 3 strikes and you're out. It's finished. You wipe your hands. And so by saying 7, he thinks he is offering a great number. But Jesus turns to him and he says to Peter, not 7 times, but 77 times. In other words, a number that is so far higher that you don't count anymore. You just keep forgiving. That's what it's all about. And that's what God does. Last week, Jesus spoke about a member of the church sinning against another. And he said, if that happens to you, go and confront the person so that you might again become good friends. If that doesn't work, then take 1 or 2 members of the congregation with you and go and try to work it out. And if it still doesn't happen, then take it to the whole congregation. It's that important. Forgiveness is the bottom line. And then he says, if that doesn't reconcile the 2 of you, then treat him as a tax collector and a Gentile. And that's where the problem arises in our interpretation of that. Because the Pharisee despised the tax collector. The tax collector was another Jew who worked for the Romans, who cheated his own people. He didn't obey the Sabbath laws. He didn't obey the dietary laws. As far as this Pharisee was concerned, he was an outsider. The same thing with Gentiles. Gentiles were totally different from Jews. They ate anything they wanted. They ate it in any way they wanted. The thing that distinguished the Jew from the rest of the world was his dietary laws. What he could eat, what he couldn't eat, how he could eat it, on what he could eat it, the plates, the utensils. This was very important to him. And so as far as the Pharisee was concerned, the normal Jew, the Gentile, was nobody you wanted to deal with. You avoided him. And so, one way to look at this passage is to say, all right, this person doesn't want to come together with me. We'll treat him as a total outsider. But the other way of looking at it is the way Jesus did. Because did Jesus see the tax collector and the Gentile as an outsider or somebody to be hated? Absolutely not. He ate with tax collectors. He talked with them. He was criticized by the Pharisees because you should know better. These people are not good. He didn't stay away from Gentiles. He realized that they were not kosher as Jews were. But still, there were times where he healed children of Gentiles because he said their faith was so great, greater than anything he'd even seen in all of Israel. And so his approach to tax collectors and to Gentiles was to continue to search for them, to reach out to them, to forgive them, diametrically opposed from what the Pharisee thought. So if we're going to treat someone as a tax collector and a Gentile, we treat them as somebody to be looked for, like the shepherd looks for the sheep. And we go after them to return them to the flock. A verse later, it says, what you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. What you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. And this passage has been interpreted in ways that have caused much mischief, because it has to deal with excommunication, which the church has practiced for centuries. You have done something against the church, you have sinned, and so the church says, you're no longer a member. You can't have communion with us. You are outside, you are excommunicated. And yet, you see, the way we read these verses, it can't be interpreted that way. The verse does not refer